got cancer.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. Where?
He built an empire on fast cars, loud opinions, and the kind of television that made millions of people around the world stop everything just to watch. For decades, Jeremy Clarkson was untouchable, a force of nature who could drive a supercar through the Arctic, get fired from the biggest show on Earth, and somehow come back bigger than ever. But nobody saw what was coming in 2024. What has really been happening to Jeremy Clarkson at 66? Stay right here, because the full story is more emotional than anyone expected. From Yorkshire streets to television royalty. Before the roaring engines and the global fame, Jeremy Charles Robert Clarkson was just a boy from Doncaster with a restless personality and a mother who made Paddington Bear toys. Born on the 11th of April 1960 in Sprotbrough, South Yorkshire, Clarkson was the son of Edward, a traveling salesman, and Shirley, a teacher, who ran a small business that eventually branched into Paddington Bear stuffed toys. The success of those toys generated enough income to send young Jeremy to the prestigious Repton School in Derbyshire, alongside future Formula One engineer Adrian Newey and future Top Gear executive producer Andy Willman, a detail that now reads almost like fate written in advance. Repton was where Clarkson sharpened his edges, though not necessarily in the academic sense. He was eventually expelled for what he later described as a combination of drinking, smoking, and making a general nuisance of himself, which, knowing the man he would become, surprised absolutely no one. After leaving school, his first real employment was selling Paddington Bear toys for his parents' business as a traveling salesman, working routes across England while absorbing the country's roads and rhythms in ways that would quietly shape everything that followed in his career. The journalism instinct came next. Clarkson trained at the Rotherham Advertiser before moving through a string of regional outlets, including the Rochdale Observer and the Wolverhampton Express and Star. He was never built for local news, but those years forged his voice into something distinctive, a directness that refused to be dull, a style that could turn even the most ordinary subject into something worth reading. By 1984, he had co-founded the Motoring Press Agency alongside a colleague, road testing vehicles for regional papers and industry publications. The reviews attracted growing attention across the trade, and BBC producers were watching carefully. In 1988, Clarkson landed his first presenting role on a show that had been struggling for energy and direction for years. He made his Top Gear debut on the 27th of October 1988, arriving with a mandate to modernize a program that had previously featured presenters such as Angela Rippon and Noel Edmonds. He got the job after a screen test in which he spent 20 minutes criticizing the Citroën 2CV with the kind of passion most people reserve for things they genuinely love. And the producer reportedly knew within moments that this was exactly the voice the show required. Top Gear began pulling in viewers who had never particularly cared about cars before, because Clarkson made it unmistakably clear from the beginning that the program was never really about the vehicles. It was about adventure, competition, and the particular British pleasure of watching someone say precisely what everyone else had been quietly thinking but never dared to put out loud. By the time the revamped Top Gear launched in October 2002, devised by Clarkson and executive producer Andy Willman alongside co-presenters Richard Hammond and James May, it had grown into something that exceeded every reasonable expectation. The show broadcast in over 100 countries and reached an estimated 350 million viewers worldwide at its peak, making it the most widely watched factual television program on Earth. Throughout this period, Clarkson was also writing influential weekly columns for the Sunday Times, reaching readers with absolutely no interest in motoring because the car was always just a starting point for a larger argument about politics, society, or the state of modern life. The fame was enormous. The platform was extraordinary. And so was the target that level of visibility placed on his back. Now, with the full scale of that rise visible in retrospect, the chapter that followed arrived with no warning at all. The fall and the reinvention. Nobody saw coming. Jeremy Clarkson's exit from the BBC was not quiet, and it was certainly not tidy. In March 2015, while filming Top Gear on location in Hawes, North Yorkshire, Clarkson became involved in a confrontation with producer Oisin Taimon after the hotel kitchen had closed for the evening and he was offered cold food instead of a hot steak following a long day of filming. What followed, according to the BBC's own investigation findings, was a sustained verbal attack and then a physical assault that lasted approximately 30 seconds. Taimon was taken to hospital and treated for a swollen and cut lip. In one of the stranger footnotes of the entire episode, it was Clarkson who reported the incident to the BBC himself on the 10th of March 2015. The investigation concluded on the 25th of March 2015 when BBC Director General Tony Hall announced that Clarkson's contract would not be renewed. The public reaction was unlike anything the BBC had encountered over a presenter dismissal in its history. Over 1 million people signed an online petition calling for his reinstatement, described at the time as the fastest-growing petition in the history of Change.org. Richard Hammond and James May both departed the show in solidarity. Top Gear attempted to rebuild with new hosts, but faced a challenge that the ratings reflected with uncomfortable clarity for years afterwards. Clarkson later settled a lawsuit brought by Taimon, with reports confirming the settlement exceeded £100,000. He issued a public apology and paid his share. Then, with characteristic refusal to stay still, he got back to work. Within months, Clarkson, Hammond, May, and Willman had all signed with Amazon Prime Video to produce a new program. The Grand Tour launched in November 2016 and ran through 2024, making it entirely clear that the global audience had been following 3 specific people and not a BBC channel. They showed up in enormous numbers on the streaming platform, and the show traveled to some of the most remote and visually spectacular corners of the world across its run. But the project that would define the later chapters of his career had nothing to do with cars, motorways, or high-speed challenges. In 2019, Clarkson began farming at Diddley Squat Farm in Oxfordshire's Cotswolds, and the documentary series that resulted, Clarkson's Farm, premiered on Amazon Prime Video in 2021 to a reaction that surprised even the people who made it. The show revealed a dimension of Clarkson that many millions of viewers had never previously encountered. Here was someone genuinely humbled by the scale of what farming demanded, discovering that the confidence required to drive a Bugatti Veyron at full speed does not equip a person in any meaningful way for the rhythms and cruelties of British agriculture. Working alongside farm manager Caleb Cooper, the series became one of the most warmly received factual shows in the world, drawing viewers who had never sat through a single minute of Top Gear. The farm also had a particular way of stripping away everything that was performance and leaving only what was real. And what came next was about as real as television has ever managed to capture. 2 health crises that changed everything. In October 2024, Jeremy Clarkson revealed that he had undergone emergency heart surgery after feeling unwell for several days while on holiday. Doctors discovered that one of his coronary arteries was completely blocked. He was taken from his Cotswolds home to a hospital in Oxford, where surgeons performed a 2-hour procedure to insert 2 stents and restore blood flow. No bypass was required. At the time, Clarkson described himself as having been days from death when the blockage was identified, and the description was not rhetorical embellishment. It was a medical reality. His account of the experience was striking in its openness. He described lying still during the procedure while feeling a metal pipe with a camera attached, working its way through his chest, writing about it in his Sunday Times column with enough clinical honesty to convey the full weight of the situation and enough wry distance to prevent it from becoming self-pity. Season 5 of Clarkson's Farm addressed the heart episode directly in its opening episodes, with Clarkson telling Caleb Cooper that 3 arteries feed the heart, and one of his had been entirely blocked. What made the scene resonate so strongly was the context around it. Life at the farm had continued without him during his recovery. The land does not pause for illness, and the show made no attempt to frame his return as anything more heroic than simply getting back to the work that needed doing. That health scare alone would have been enough to anchor an entire documentary season around. It was not the end of what the series had to tell. In May 2025, Clarkson underwent a routine medical assessment that led to further investigation. A biopsy confirmed what came back from that investigation. He had prostate cancer, and it was aggressive. He later emphasized repeatedly that the cancer had been caught at a very early stage and credited that early detection with making the difference between a treatable situation and one that could have spread unchecked. He shared the news on camera with Caleb Cooper and land agent Charlie Ireland at Diddley Squat Farm, telling them directly that the cancer was aggressive but early and that he planned to wait until after the harvest before beginning treatment. The scene carried an emotional weight that the farmland setting deepened rather than softened. These were not strangers receiving a press release. These were the people who had worked alongside him through floods, crop failures, planning disputes, and every other difficulty the farm had thrown at all of them over 5 years of filming together. Watching them absorb that news in real time made it very difficult for anyone watching to feel nothing. The Season 5 finale of Clarkson's Farm, released on the 17th of June 2026 on Amazon Prime Video, ended with one of the most emotionally resonant television moments of the year. Clarkson appeared in a hospital bed following a surgical procedure in which 10% of his prostate was removed at the site of the tumor. He told viewers that some elements of his treatment had not gone as planned, that he would be in hospital a while longer, and then he delivered the line that stopped people mid-breath everywhere. He said directly that if the treatment was successful, he would see them for Season 6. And if it was not, he would not. Take care, everyone. The screen went to black. The response from audiences was immediate, genuine, and deeply felt in a way that was impossible to manufacture. This was not a cliffhanger designed for dramatic effect. This was a man at 66 years old lying in a hospital bed, not knowing with any certainty what would follow, and being honest about that uncertainty in front of millions of people who had spent years watching him pretend nothing could ever touch him. The outpouring of concern that followed reflected something Clarkson had probably never set out to earn during 4 decades of car reviews and deliberately provocative columns. He had built real affection from people who had watched him be brilliant and infuriating and occasionally maddening in roughly equal measure. But grief was not the ending, not even close. The comeback and the message that could save lives. The update that followed the Season 5 finale arrived quickly, and it carried exactly the relief that viewers had been quietly hoping they might receive. Jeremy Clarkson confirmed in an interview with the Sunday Times that he is now officially in remission, describing himself without any irony as the world's luckiest man. A prostate-specific antigen test carried out in April 2026 showed no evidence of cancer remaining. He shared the result publicly and without delay, understanding that people who had watched the finale deserved to know. The Instagram video he posted to accompany that confirmation was filmed while he was walking around outdoors at the farm, and it opened with a line that only Clarkson could have scripted for himself. He told his followers that the more observant among them would have noticed he was not dead. He told them he was not just not dead, but perfectly fine, and that his eyebrows were, specifically, in excellent condition. He then moved without any preamble into the message that he clearly understood was the only reason any of the public disclosure mattered in the first place. He urged men to go and get tested for prostate cancer, explaining that screening today does not involve the invasive procedure that many men have long been reluctant to face. It is predominantly a blood test measuring prostate-specific antigen levels, available from a general practitioner, requiring neither significant time nor significant discomfort. His argument was as simple as he could possibly make it. He got tested. They found it early. He is alive. That is the entire case. In the Sunday Times interview, Clarkson reflected on the sequence of events with a clarity that carried genuine weight. He told the publication that between his heart emergency in October 2024 and his cancer treatment in 2025, he had faced the possibility of death twice within roughly 12 months. He spoke about friends he had watched lose their fights with cancer over the years, about the particular helplessness of knowing that an illness is advancing and cannot be stopped, and about the difference that a single routine check made in his own case. The cancer he carried was aggressive. It could have spread to the pancreas. It could have moved anywhere in his body. What stopped it from doing so was nothing more and nothing less than the fact that it was found in time. He was equally candid about the complication that sent him back to hospital in the Season 5 finale, and he was unsparing about where the blame for that belonged. He had been taking blood-thinning medication for his heart condition throughout his cancer treatment, and decided, without consulting a doctor, that it would be safe to resume those medications before he was medically cleared to do so. The result was a severe emergency in the middle of the night that he described as going well beyond any reasonable pain scale. He did not minimize what happened, did not deflect responsibility, and did not dress the episode in anything more flattering than the plain truth. It was entirely his own fault. He said so clearly, and then he moved on. As of June 2026, Clarkson is back at Diddley Squat Farm filming Season 6, confirmed for release on Amazon Prime Video in summer 2027. He appeared at the cereal's agricultural trade show hosted at the farm, which drew a record crowd of more than 25,000 visitors, and was photographed walking through the crowd, stopping to talk with farmers, laughing, and delivering a speech with cameras and crew filming around him. The man who appeared in a hospital bed wondering whether there would be a Season 6 is now filming it. He continues to host Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and to write weekly columns for both the Sunday Times and The Sun, sustaining a public presence that would challenge most broadcasters half his age. There is something almost perversely fitting about the fact that one of Britain's most deliberately combative voices has become one of its most effective advocates for prostate cancer awareness among men. His platform reaches people that formal health campaigns frequently do not. His credibility with an audience that often dismisses official medical messaging is real and has been built over years, and his willingness to state plainly, without sentiment or performance, that he got tested and that testing saved his life carries persuasive power that public health bodies spend considerable resources trying to generate. Prostate cancer is among the most common cancers affecting men, and the disease frequently causes no symptoms in its earliest and most treatable stages. That silence is precisely what makes routine screening conversations between men and their doctors so important, and precisely what makes a figure like Clarkson so valuable in putting that message in front of audiences who might otherwise never think about it. If a single person watches Season 5 of Clarkson's Farm, walks into a surgery for a blood test because of what they saw, and catches something early enough to treat it successfully, then Clarkson's willingness to put the worst of his year on screen will have been worth more than any of the broadcasting awards his career accumulated before it. The story of Jeremy Clarkson at 66 is not a story about decline, and it is not a story about a man stepping back from the world. It is a story about someone who faced genuine mortality on 2 separate occasions within a single calendar year, survived both of them, and responded not with quiet withdrawal, but with exactly the same confrontational honesty that built his career across 4 decades of television. He showed the hospital bed. He said the uncomfortable thing. He told his audience what was actually happening. And then he walked back out onto the farm, pulled on his boots, and told everyone watching to go and get a blood test. That is, in its own loud and entirely Clarkson way, a remarkable thing to have done. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.